Welcome to a special Cards on the Table from the FA's resplendent St George's Park, and we're here to talk to one of England's finest and foremost football journalists, a man who influences thinking inside as well as outside the game. He's Henry Winter of the Daily Telegraph. Henry, good to see you, and thanks for talking to us. I'm sure we've got plenty to discuss about the subject of refereeing, but an accusation might be that the likes of you and I don't know very much about it, just like people say you've never played the game. So have you ever reffed a game of football?
I reffed a school game and I was absolutely hopeless, and I almost set myself off. It was awful. And the kids actually were very good and were very sort of amenable, very well behaved. There was absolutely no dissent, no trouble, but just keeping up with it physically. I was probably fit enough to keep up with it, but just running the diagonals and making sure you kept up with play and kept an eye on everyone else, and my respect for referees went up.
Yeah, as did mine when I refereed a game between a team of journalists and a police team. And you can guess who caused me the problems.
The journalists probably the police?
It was the police.
Wow.
But just simple things like recalling who did that ball come off last to go out for that throw-in. The concentration required.
I've run a line as well, and that was actually even more demanding, actually, because that split second, and you are the one who has to give that decision, relay the information, and I really struggled there.
Yeah. Well, as journalists, we're required to judge referees as we are players and teams, and there is that system within the media of giving marks out of 10 to every player and the referee, which I think is impossible. And actually is disrespectful at times, I think, to referees.
It is. I mean, I don't do the ratings, but they are very difficult, and there have been some terrible incidents down the year. I can remember being on the England team bus in 2004, where Ashley Cole had just had a fantastic game against Cristiano Ronaldo, and someone from the England team bus rang the press team bus to complain that Ashley Cole had only been given 3 out of 10, and all you could hear in the background with the England players chanting 3 out of 10, you're having a laugh. Because the ratings, and I'm probably giving away trade secrets here, the ratings are often done by 60 minutes, particularly with the bigger circulation, i.e. the tabloid newspapers. They really have to sort of rush it out because they've got so many copies to shift. So the ratings will often go at 60 minutes. And, if you're Ashley Cole and your stamina is one of your main strengths, and you're delivering and you're playing brilliantly towards the end of the game, you don't necessarily get the credit that you deserve. You can always update it for the second edition.
I've been there doing ratings after an hour, and sometimes even at half time. I think it's disrespectful to the players, the fans, and the journalists poor journalists has to do it. Anyway, we're talking about referees, the standard. If you had to give a mark out of 10 for the current crop of elite referees, what would you give?
Depends how you define the elite referees. If you're talking of PGMO, is it 18, 18, yes. 20 in the PGMO? I would probably give 6 out of 10. If I was looking at what I would consider the real top 2 or 3, I'm a huge Clattenburg fan. Partly because I cover a lot of matches in Europe, and you talk to foreign players, foreign coaches, foreign journalists, and they go, Clattenburg was here the other week, he was absolutely brilliant. He just ran it because he's got the sort of the personality, the stamina, there's something about him. He's got that authority. There's a lot of sympathy. Just coming back to your central point, Clattenburg comfortably the best referee in the country for me. Michael Oliver is coming up fast. They parachuted in very early, 25, 26. I know he comes from a refereeing background, but that was quite a test for him. I like the way he's had 1 or 2 setbacks, but he's recovered. But I think at the moment we've got 4 or 5 very good referees, and then some middle ranking ones, and then some poor ones. And I do look into the Championship and below that, and I do worry about the quality coming through. I know the Premier League and where they've set up this scheme to almost fast track some of the younger ones through, but I don't know. It's difficult. Plus also they're walking into the perfect storm of the game's getting faster, players are cheating, social media getting madder. It's tough for referees.
Indeed. Just addressing the Clattenburg point, first of all, you're a great fan. There's a feeling that perhaps he doesn't have that many fans within the hierarchy, or at least not fans to the extent that they rate him as the #1 referee. His treatment, he's getting minor Premier League games. He was even suspended on a minor technicality. What's your feeling on that?
I think PGMO's attitude towards England's best referee, Mark Clattenburg, is wrong. I think it borders on disgraceful. I think he's a fantastic referee. The support he gets from UEFA and FIFA because he is such a good referee. If I talk to the referees I really respect, and I say, they're often not very good at giving praise to their rivals, but invariably they say, we like Clattenburg. You talk to Stephen Gerrard, I wrote a book with Gerrard, and I said, what are the referees like? He said, well, there's a young one, this was about 10 years ago, there's a young referee coming up, Clattenburg's got something about him that I instinctively respect. If he wants to go to an Ed Sheeran concert, well, so what? You might question his taste in music, but you can't question his right to actually go and see Ed Sheeran. I understand they all have to travel in and out together. I think it's a little bit precious, and I think maybe we should trust the fans and trust the referees, that referee can walk into a ground and get himself home without sort of running into trouble.
As a mature man.
But we had an issue with Mike Riley and PGMO over their lack of protection for Clattenburg over the Chelsea allegation. Mikel, I was in there at the time. I talked to Chelsea. I said, I understand all the sort of, the tension because you felt hard done by over Terry. They weren't. Terry deserved all the criticism he got. So to make an accusation like this to probably our second best referee at the time after Howard Webb, I thought it was disgraceful. We rang up the Premier League and said, why aren't you going to defend him? And Clattenburg basically almost had to go into hiding. It was just wrong. He was hounded, which is the dark side of our profession. But I think a lot of journalists did stand up for him because we could see that PGMO weren't protecting him, Mike Riley wasn't protecting him, and he deserved it. And Chelsea behaved badly, and we've talked to them on subsequent occasions, said, have you apologised to him? And there was a feeling that the PGMO might not send him back there for a bit. If there are people of substance within the PGMO, they should have said, right, the moment all that was cleared, and obviously Clattenburg was cleared, get it back into Stamford Bridge as soon as possible to make a point to Chelsea that we're going to stand up for our refs.
But it seems to be part of a wider policy of silence and suppression on any kind of refereeing talking point. Do you feel that?
I did. I mean, I'm sort of old enough to remember being able to walk out into a car park and bump into David Ellery, and I know he's had his problems recently. But the good thing about Ellery is that he would explain points of law to sort of laymen like me. And he would talk, and if there was, I can remember being outside White Hart Lane when Samasi Abu of West Ham refused to leave the field when he'd been sent off. And we just talked to Ellery about how you handle a situation like that with a stroppy player refusing to leave the pitch. And he was very good. And so I was able subsequently to write a more measured report with a bit more information. And this is the problem that PGMO have got. And Mike Riley was a good referee. I'm sure he's a good leader of PGMO. But he should allow referees to talk. Just because his own personality, he was quite, I wouldn't say inhibited, but he's not an expressive person, like say David Ellery. He should allow that, if they want to, referees to come out and just clarify points of law, rather than he and Howard Webb, sitting detached from the action in the Salford studio. I think that would be important. I would trust the referees to, I've talked to a lot of them, I would say it's probably 50-50 whether they want to come out and talk. But I'm sorry, if you're going to be going out and doing, European Championship finals, huge games at the World Cup, you should be able to come out and just have whatever, 3-minute conversation with journalists afterwards. I think at the very least, one journalist should be allowed to go and talk to them and say, listen, there were 3 controversial moments in this game. Now, from a journalistic perspective, if a referee doesn't come out and talk, actually, it gives us more headlines because we can dive into the void. The Premier League is naively allowing this void to develop, and I think they probably quite like the controversy because it spreads the drama and the global appeal of the game. But I think it would help the referees if they were allowed to come out and talk and just clarify. If I'm ill, I go and see a doctor and say, what's wrong? You go to an expert. I want to hear what the referee's got to say to actually explain the laws. You had it the other day with the double kick from Joe Hart. I was listening to the commentary, and I was thinking, well, why hasn't that been? Why has Charlie Austin's goal been ruled out? Now, if the referee had been able to come out and talk after the game, it was clarified during the game. But I think it'd be good if the referees just educate us. We are scared of having a proper debate, an intelligent, unheated debate in this country with the proper facts, which is wrong. It'd be great if the referees were allowed to come out and give us those facts.
Because they're not 19-year-old kids, as some players are. We're talking about middle-aged professional men, who are well able to express themselves. That's one of their skills, in fact, on the field, isn't it? Communication.
Absolutely. I mean, some referees maybe don't want to be in front of cameras. Fair enough. They don't want the limelight, but they're representing their profession, and their profession is in a difficult place at the moment, and it needs PGMO and the referees themselves to actually say, listen, we're the professionals, we know the laws better than you. I've sat down with Mike Riley and gone through refereeing decisions, and I got most of them wrong. And and that is through watching it on a screen with a multitude of angles. So for the quality of our linesmen, like Darren Can should be one of the most, and Mike Malarkey should be one of the most, two of the most sort of fated individuals in the country for the work they do, that professionalism that they have, that athleticism to get into the right position, the intelligence and get into the right position, and then to have the eyesight and the experience to get that all right. I think they should be totally praised. And I've talked to Mike and particularly Darren, who's very chatty at events, and you have a really good conversation with them. And I come away feeling far more knowledgeable about refereeing and about what they go through, and yet they're not allowed to talk publicly, which is daft.
Well, a couple of things to finish with. Personality was a word that you used in association with Mark Clattenburg, having a strong persona on the field of play. Do you get the feeling that that is discouraged in the present production line of referees?
I think if you put Mike Riley and Mark Clattenburg side by side, you would know instinctively the one that was the more outgoing personality. I think Clattenburg's, I've only talked to him a few times, he seems a sort of level-headed, good guy who is a terrific referee. Talk to the players respect him, the managers respect him.
As they did Mark Halsey previously.
And Mark Halsey as well. Well, Mark Halsey was another case in point. Mark Halsey was a very good referee who had the respect of the players, and also because of difficult circumstances that he went through, you saw the outpouring of support for Mark, partly because of what he was going through, but partly because of the huge respect the game felt for him. And Mark was always very good coming out and talking afterwards and explaining decisions. It has to be done that. I don't want to go to court and if I've done something wrong, then get taken down with the judge, not explaining what the reasoning is. So referees should be allowed to talk.
And finally, Henry, we're doing something that I think some people in the game would actively discourage. We're actually talking about refereeing issues in the same way as an ex-player will analyse a current player, an ex-manager will be a pundit talking about current managers. So is there any difference really in our ex-referees analysing the current referees? Any difference at all?
I think we need more ex-referees in the media. Graham Pole's got his column. Mark Halsey does stuff. Dermot Gallagher does stuff. And I think it's terrific. And I know when they will be talking or writing during the week, and I make a beeline for those occasions, because again it educates me and lifts the scales from my eyes on a subject that the laws, they have to interpret the laws at 22, 23 miles an hour. That is difficult. It's difficult enough in a car, let alone a pitch.
Henry, many thanks. Really
Pleasure.
enjoyed that. Thank
Pleasure.
you. Cheers.
Cheers.